Pouya, aka Kevin Pouya, is an American rapper of Iranian and Cuban descent from Miami, Florida. Pouya dropped out of school in grade 10 and began his music career in 2012 by posting songs on SoundCloud. He co-founded the Buffet Boys rap collective with his best friend Fat Nick. At first, the collective only consisted of Fat Nick and Pouya, but they later added other artists like Germ and Shake to their group. At first, Pouya found himself in the same frustrating position as most artists, where his music wasn't able to attract much attention on its own. However, Fat Nick and Pouya were able to grow a sizable audience through an online comedy show that they created titled The Nick and Pouya Show. Despite these successes, Pouya still had his eyes set on being a successful rapper, and in 2013, he finally attained some fame and recognition after dropping his project entitled Baby Bone. This probably happened in part by converting some of the fans and followers of his comedy show into fans and followers of his music. At the time of making this video, Pouya has currently released 2 solo studio albums, Underground Underdog and 5-5. Let's get into the cook-up. First, I made a custom patch in Omnisphere, and I layered it in stack mode with another set of keys. I'm going to be working in D minor once again. I'll speed up the footage here while I make the melody. Here's what I came up with. I added some effects. First, I added a 1/4 delay. Next, I added this gross beat preset. Then I applied an EQ with a low cut at 82 Hz, a boost at 294 Hz. I subtracted some frequencies around 2.8 kHz, and I added a high cut at 4.1 kHz. Lastly, I applied some reverb. Here's what the melody sounds like with effects added. I pulled up this patch in Nexus to layer the melody once more. But I had to add some effects. Firstly, I detuned the piano with the Isotope Vinyl plugin. Then I added an EQ to cut the lows at 334 Hz, and I boosted at 2.9 kHz. I also applied some reverb. Here's what it sounds like now. I pulled up this texture in Omnisphere, and I laid down a couple of notes. I added some effects to give it a more gritty feel. First, I applied this Crusher plugin. Then I added an EQ to cut the lows around 360 Hz. I boosted at 632 Hz, and I added a high cut at 12 kHz because the Crusher effect added an unpleasant high-end frequency that I wanted to get rid of. Then I added some reverb. Here's what the texture sounds like now. I opened this preset in Absinthe and I laid down a few notes. I added some effects. First, I applied this gross beat preset. Next, I added an EQ to cut the lows at 614 Hz, and I boosted at 2.9 kHz. And lastly, I added some reverb. Here's what it sounds like with the effects added. For the last melodic element, I opened up this custom preset I made a while ago in Omnisphere, and I laid down some notes. Then I added some effects. First, I added some distortion with ImageLine's Hardcore plugin. Then I added an EQ to cut the lows at 411 Hz with a slight boost at 632 Hz. Now the keys sound like this. I made this kick pattern. I laid down an 808 that just follows the kick. I laid down a snare. I added a perk. I made this hat pattern. Here's what the drums sound like all together. Now it's time to move on to the rest of the Pouya formula. The first part is already complete. Next, we have to think about lyrics. Pouya's lyrics frequently feature gun references. He mentions in a lot of his songs that he's from Florida. He also makes references to himself frequently as underground underdog and baby bone. And he also mentions how he's living lavish. As for the delivery, Pouya's flow just tends to ride the beat, with intermittent spurts of rapid-fire lyrics. As for the vocals, a lot of Pouya's tracks feature him doing more than one take of his verse and then layering them. So we'll have to record a few takes of our verse, pick whichever one we like best for the main vocal, and then put the other take in the background. And just a disclaimer, I'm not attempting to do an outright impression of Pouya. My intent is just to copy some of his flow patterns and subject matter found within his lyrics. With all of that out of the way, let's see what we've come up with.
Down south, boy, Florida, where I growed up, devil been hold up on my shoulder.